What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to another channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we're gonna make you guys a fun little hunter build. Nothing super meta, but you can also take it into the end game content if you would like. But this is for going through this game, having some fun, because people like to forget on Destiny that we're not here to always just min-max, make sure that every single build can get through GMs, even though this one still can, promise you that. But this will be a nice fun prismatic hunter build for y'all, using that relativism class item with the Spirit of Caliban as our first one right here. Powered melee final blows trigger that ignition, so we're getting some juicer melees, as well as on this we are also using the Spirit of Verity, so weapon final blows with a matching damage type of our grenade grants stacking grenade bonus, so we're getting those juicy grenades on top of those juicy melees. So let's get into this build with the Prismatic Subclass. So right here, quick and to the point for y'all, our Prismatic Hunter went with our Silence and Squall for that slow and freeze. We got overloads because of this, plus it is very good at that add suppression, if you will, pairs with our Fragments as well. For me, I'm going with Gambler's Dodge, Triple Jump, as well as our Combination Blow, so we can just go around, dodge, use that Combination Blow, which will give us back our class ability when we get those final defeats, and just instantly repeat that chain right there, so we can proc that Caliban's often, causing that add explosion everywhere, which just pairs beautifully, going through anything like the breach executable right here. Now for our grenade on this build, we are going to be using the Swarm Grenade, feels the best to me, plus we are using it for its Scorch effect, being able to ignite those enemies. Also pairs with our Fragments well, and Unstoppable for that nice ignition, so you will see why we're using that with the weapons as well, for that solar synergy of Verities, making these swarmers even better. As for our two aspects that we are using, Threaded Spectre, so we can get those strand little tangles to spawn, as well as those threaded little specters that explode, causing damage on top of that. Plus we're using Winter Shroud right here to slow those enemies. Again, this will be used for those overload champions. We're going to be using this Threaded Spectre just for that add clear potential, as well as creating even more tangles, plus for getting Transcendent. These will help us with that darkness side, because we're using two light abilities right here. As for our Fragments down here that pair with everything, we're using Facet of Awakening, so defeating targets with light or darkness, or super give us elemental pickup, so we're going to be creating Ionic Traces, Fire Sprites, Tangles, and Stasis Shards with this build, just because of our abilities that we have on, and Facet of Awakening. Facet of Balance is next, so defeating those targets with light damage grants us melee energy, defeating targets with the darkness energy grants us grenade energy, allowing us to get our abilities back a little bit faster, because this is just for the juicer melee and grenades for this build. Facet of Dawn right here is our next one, with those powered melee hits making us radiant. We're going to be using this consistently because of the combination of the Calibans with the Gambler's Dodge, as well as Combination Blow. You can see we dodge melee, just dodge melee consistently, so this will be a good little prismatic fragment to have on to keep us radiant almost consistently. Next on the list, we have a Facet of Purpose, so picking up an Orb of Power grants us Amplification, Restoration, Frost Armor based on our equipped super, so that is another reason why we are using our Stasis super, so we can get that Frost Armor, because I really do like the Frost Armor as well as Woven Mail for this aspect of the Facet of Purpose, so I went with the Frost Armor because I like the Silence and Squall a little bit more than our Strand super. Moving on, what pairs perfectly with those ignitions that we're getting from the juicy grenades, as well as the Calibans, we are using that Facet of Ruin, so Stasis Crystals or frozen targets have a bigger shatter radius, as well as our solar ignitions have a larger AoE, so we're getting both of those with our build right here. By dodging consistently, we're going to slow and freeze enemies, creating that explosion right there. And then, like I said, with the Scorch, we're getting on this build via our weapons, as well as with the juicer grenades, because of our class item and that Verity on it. It's going to pair perfectly with Facet of Ruin, probably the most important one on this build, besides maybe our first fragment that I went over with that Balance and Awakening. Last on our list right here is Facet of Courage. Our Arc, Solar, and Void abilities do more damage to those affected by darkness debuffs, which is perfect because every single time we dodge, we're applying a darkness debuff that's slow on those enemies, as well as using those strand tangles and thread links to create a bunch of debuffs in the darkness side. Our grenade and our melee are going to do more damage because of that, so Facet of Courage is also very important for this build because it is procced consistently, and we're able to clear adds upon adds with this build, with that class item having juicy grenade and melee damage on it. Moving on to the weapons that we're going to be using for this build. So I'm going to be using Luna's Howl with that heal clip incandescent, giving us survivability, being able to stun some champions with this as well. Plus with that incandescent, we're going to get that Facet of Ruin to proc a little bit more often, getting those nice explosions. Plus it pairs perfectly with our Verities down here to give our Scorch Grenades even more of that oomph. Lament right here as well. We got our anti-barriers on this, plus we have that exotic slot saluted pretty perfectly for this solar side of things, giving this a little bit of extra oomph on it to give our Verities a little extra oomph, etc. Now we're using that Sword Breaker right here with Pugilist as well as 1-2 Punch. Those nice explosions on the melee final blows is gonna get us Pugilist and 1-2 Punch to get even more juicy, because those defeats give us back our melee energy with Pugilist. 1-2 Punch makes them even more powerful, and then of course after we get those melee attacks, we're also going to get Cursed Thrall to proc on this, creating even more explosions. So the synergy of all three of these is perfect, with being able to juice our grenades with these two weapons and stun champions, and then this with everything because of our melee build with Pugilist, 1-2 Punch, and the Cursed Thrall perk. For our stats on this, I went with Resilience as our number 1 option, Strength as number 2, with our Discipline as number 3. You could switch this up if you would like, but there will be some times that our Strength does get left out, if you will, or I should say our melee gets lost in that end game content. If you do happen to hit it and it wastes it, it comes back in 20 seconds anyways. Plus we are only a little bit off from the grenade cooldown here. 7 seconds is nothing too crazy in my opinion, especially with the mods that we have on momentum transfer. When we cause damage with our grenade, we get our melee impact, vice versa. Super nice. Plus we have that grenade kickstarter on, which allows us to juice our discipline up even more, if you will, because of getting it back faster. With double bomber, we're also getting the ability to get back our ability for that grenade fast, so that's why we have our strength at 100 first. On top of that, we got absolution right here, so we get all of our abilities back with recuperation for a little bit of health, that arc resistance for what I was going into, plus that solar siphon hands on to get our super back faster. This will help us create even more orbs of power, while giving that support of that armor charge to our fellow allies. With this powerful attraction, since we're going to be creating a bunch of different things with those stasis shards, orbs of power, etc. like that, we're going to be able to get our dodge back very often with this build, and our melee and such, creating even more orbs of power. So that's why we threw on this, to get those orbs when we dodge. But very simple little build. It's basically just going to be you going in there, you use your weapons to your fullest advantage whenever you need them, but you're going to be dodging, throwing a grenade, dodging, meleeing, dodging melee, dodging melee, throw your grenade again, dodging melee. It is just a wonderful little synergy that you got. You're going to have threaded specters everywhere, slow, freeze, that Facet of Ruin is going to proc very easily. Last but not least, we got our Hunter's Journal. Not too much going on here. Transference will help us to get back our light and that dark energy for Transcendent. Plus, we're going to get those juicy grenade and melee damage when we are in that Transcendent state. Right here, we're going to be able to get that melee and grenade back pretty consistently, because 1, we're going to have Frost Armor, 2, we're going to have that Amplified as well as Radiant pretty often on this. Radiant Orbs is going to help us to keep that up even more consistently, on top of what we have on our abilities and fragments down there to consistently have it via that charged melee. Right here for that end game counter energy, giving us back our abilities a little bit more as well, with the Press of Advantage right here, breaking those combatant shields gives us stability, handling, and reload speed. Swords gain that guard resistance. Not that Lament needs it too much, but little advantage to this build for sure is having that on. But overall, just a wild little build for us. If you would like to take this Saint's Impression off, because we really aren't using it too often, you could throw on that Threaded Blast as well, which will give us those strand tangles that we are creating if we shoot it with our shotgun. A little bit larger explosion, but overall this build is going to be a bunch, like I said, of you just going around dodging, slowing, and freezing targets, using that combination blow to hit, cause explosions via that Caliban on our class item, get our grenade energy back, get those to proc via our weapon defeats with our Luna's Howl mostly, get get that Scorch to spread, throw out our grenade because it's going to be juiced because of Verity on our class item, let that thing do its job, create even more Scorch, a explosion will happen with ignition, Facet of Ruin is going to proc consistently, and then you just rinse and repeat, dodge a couple times with those melees in between, creating the explosions. You'll have your grenade back by then, get a couple defeats with your hand cannon in between, throw out that grenade, and it is just a 1-2 punch, literally, I guess I should say a 1-2 punch melee grenade. You got 3 things going on right here, but very fun little build. You can take it into any content. Like I said, fun build instead of a min-maxed build that everybody's always looking for, but like I said, still goes through GMs if you would like it to, just a little bit harder with using that Calibans to proc, because some of those enemies are obviously a little bit juicy. That's where that Synthoceps or something on the class item would be a little bit better for that end game, but still works totally fine like this inside of this build. So appreciate you guys again coming back to the channel. Means a lot to me, means a lot to the channel. If you guys like, subscribe to the video, helps out a bunch as well for the algorithm. So appreciate you guys again. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.